Hello and welcome to Happy Maths Hour Live, and it's all about education for life in the 21st century. It's about learning. Toni.
Yes, we're going to be just chatting. This isn't specifically for teachers, it's for anybody who's interested in education. And Caroline and I are just going to be talking about how education needs to have changed and needs to be changing, to be flexible, because life's changing, mainly because of technology. Okay, so what you see in the little disc in the middle of the screen there is 21st century skills. These 4 skills characterize what human beings can do well, sometimes not, but very often they can do these things extremely well. They can communicate with other people, they can be creative, they can collaborate with other people on some work project or some game like football or whatever. They can think critically. And these are important skills that machines are not quite so good at. And so this is where we win over machines. Machines do communicate, don't they, Caroline?
But they very definitely communicate. This is the holy grail for the AI, for the artificial intelligence programmers, is to actually copy the way that humans process. But those things are what make us human.
Yes, indeed. Okay, so let's move on. Now, the 21st century, just look at that picture of a factory floor. I can't see a single human being. Can you, Caroline?
I can see lots of machines, lots of wires, stuff being manufactured, robots, no humans.
There's 4 cars on the production line there, and clearly they're being assembled. This is what you call an assembly line. And those red and black things are clearly they're robots. And they're doing the sort of jobs that people used to do until not very long ago, actually. That's just one picture to show us really, make us think about how much the world is changing with technology. So in every sphere of human activity, technology is changing the world. That's why we're saying education needs to change. And knowledge of knowing facts and algorithms. Now, what algorithms are is routines, methods, if you like, but the same repeating the same method over and over again, so that you may be proficient, but actually people do those sorts of calculations without understanding what they're doing, and that is useless, really useless. But just knowledge of facts and algorithms, machines are superior and they replace people these days. So the sort of jobs that people used to do, there's no employment doing those things, many things that people used to do. And as for knowledge of facts, we can look things up. So we do need to have the knowledge, but knowledge without understanding is pretty useless, so we can apply it. So the gold standard for 2022 and the future, that's for education, what it should offer is in gold there. What do you think about what's in gold there, Caroline?
So motivation, you can't motivate a machine. You switch it on, you switch it off. If it's on, it goes. Whereas humans, the motivation is part of the creativity as well. It's you're motivated to learn, you're motivated to improve. Wanting to improve is an inherent part of a healthy human thinking process, and the ability to learn independently. Now, again, AI, artificial intelligence, is working on, yes, and they do. The computers and programs learn independently, but when humans learn independently, real magic can happen, and huge developments can happen. And that's what education wants to be, nurturing. And then a commitment to lifelong learning, that is something that if the result of the education system, if when a human comes out of the education system, they have a burning desire to continue lifelong learning, that is a successful education for them.
Well, the thing is that it was very different when I was a child, but now, I mean, there's the teacher isn't in the classroom, isn't, and parents and adults are not the source of all knowledge. No, they are certainly not. And even reference books in a library, you can so easily look things up on search and do Google search and find information on the computer, and you can just go on and find out more and more. I mean, some of it's false. false
you have
news.
You have to use that critical thinking to assess what you're reading and figure out whether it is fake news or if it is genuine. And you do your own research in other areas, speak to knowledgeable people. So it's that critical thinking can help you process what you discover on Google.
But the way we learn is actually, when we use, say, our phone or a computer, is interesting, actually. If we want to do something, we try it. And if that doesn't work, we try something else. And we keep trying, failing, until we have success. And if we can't succeed, we ask somebody else. And, that's how we learn. Well, there's so much to learn. I mean, when you buy a new appliance in the kitchen, a new cooker or something, or new TV, the controls are different and there's a challenge in that. So that's why we have to be able to learn. And we can actually take a cue from the way we learn when we're experimenting with a new skill or something we want to do. I mean, today I was in a queue and I was going to pay for something, and the person in front of me used their phone. Now, I haven't learned yet how to use my phone. I'm still on the tap the credit card on.
I like the way you use the word yet, Toni. I haven't learned yet. I have a little story to tell you about Toni. It was the most beautiful thing. Toni says, and she says this to an audience, she'll say this to people whenever she's doing a presentation, that she learns something new every day. And she'll tell her age, which is 81. I think it's okay for me to say that. But I've been hearing that ever since I've known you. And what I loved, I witnessed this for myself, because Toni was learning how to edit a movie. We do these videos and we create how-to videos and things. And Toni was actually doing the editing on this occasion. And she was sitting on her computer, moving the mouse and things. And she said, "Oh, this is so exciting. It's really difficult." And so she was actually excited because she was learning something difficult as opposed to learning something easy. That is healthy learning behavior.
But you see, I've met people very, very often. I've heard somebody say, "Oh, I don't know. I didn't do geography at school. I didn't do geography from GCSE or for that O levels." Now, that really is pathetic, isn't it? Really, I mean, we can't possibly learn everything at school. And anyway, even if we could, things are changing so much that when I left school, which was a long time ago, a lot of the things that one needs to know now, just nobody knew at that time.
And there's another attitude as well, and I see this a lot every day in school, and that is that I don't know how to do it, therefore I can't do it. And they'll have a few questions and they'll only attempt the ones they know how to do. The ones they don't know how to do, they won't even have a stab at. Not they, I mean, not everybody, but I experience a learner that won't have a stab at something they don't know how to do. They're expecting to be taught how to do it before they'll attempt it, instead of using the building on knowledge that they already have and having a go at it.
Well, Caroline is doing supply teaching at the moment, and that's pretty hard. Because the children are quite resentful about having, all these supply teachers and their proper teacher not being there, and also because basically they're not motivated a lot. Well, again, one shouldn't generalize, but many of the children are not motivated, and I've found that the peer culture in this country is, even if you are keen to learn, you don't want to show it, because then, you maybe get other children not so popular. So what do you think, Caroline, about why is it that so many children are not motivated?
It's partly when they have their home life isn't based on a successful education, then a lot of times they'll hear, I don't need an education and we're doing fine, you don't need to. So you'll have that culture at home. Then you've got the ones who have a fear of failure, so that they might have the opposite. They might have parents who are extremely successful, and their expectation on them is to be successful, and they just can't cope with the pressure. And a lot of times, and also the peer pressure element is worrying. And I have to say, I don't know, and I've seen it. I've got a little 6-year-old friend who was keen to learn when she was 3, and now that she's 6, I can see literally she has started the teenage can't be bothered.
Oh dear.
She's doing the behaviors now at 6 that I'm seeing in the teenagers. So she's learning it from her peers. So it's a cultural thing. It's actually happening not from the teachers, obviously, not from the parents. It's happening from the peers in the classrooms.
Well, I have to say this country, and we're in England, is rather different from other countries in that I don't meet what we're talking about so much, hardly at all actually, in Africa. Now, what we have in this country, and here it's the non-whites are much more people, are much more motivated in their culture. Very often they're much more motivated to learn, and it's I'm afraid in England the problem is with the whites, isn't it, Caroline?
It's the immigrants. The immigrants tend to be motivated to learn because the parents are pushing their children to learn and to take advantage of. They've gone through difficulties and trauma. They've left their home, and it's not so much. Yeah, it's about it, because this also works for Eastern Europeans. It's everybody that's come to the UK to have a better life, or they want their children to get a good education, so they are pushing for it. Whereas if people are already here and everything's fine, and they think that there's no pressure to do, and that nobody in their family has a university degree or has done anything other with their life other than work, and they're happy with that, then there's no encouragement to improve.
But then I work a lot in Africa, and particularly in South Africa, and I'm working with teachers, and what we find there is much more motivation amongst the children, although that's changing in some places, particularly the cities. And my motivation, my personal motivation in doing what I do, is because when I see poverty, and if you haven't seen poverty in one of these countries in Africa or in India, say, then you hardly know what poverty is. We think we know what poverty is in this country, but really I'm talking about a really much more serious situation. And I see education as an opportunity for young people to escape the poverty trap, because it is a matter of whether they can get a job and what sort of job they can get in adult life. But one is needing this ability to learn for other things too, other aspects of life, and not just to get a job. So, well, let's move on, because I think we've got more to talk about. So what do we want our young people to learn, as well as the subject, or the subjects? Well, generic competences and skills. So they are competences and skills that apply in life in general and in whatever we learn. So first of all, there's
Toni said, just so, because when I first heard the term generic competencies, I kind of had to ask again, and you've just said it, I'm going to say it again, it's life skills, effectively, skills that you learn through education that you use throughout the whole of your life.
Absolutely. And competences is slightly different from skills. I mean, competence means you can do something, but not necessarily you can do it brilliantly, or maybe it's something that's, it's just something you do. Whereas skills, you can be outstanding at skills. I'm not sure. There's a subtle difference between. They're very similar, those two ideas. Well, first of all, higher order thinking skills, and that means logic, reasoning. And it means being systematic, and that means if it's something complicated with many aspects to it, you do it in the right order so the thing works effectively, optimally. And then
something that I find is that young learners, when you want them to be systematic, they don't want to do it because they feel that means that they're not clever enough to take a leap and know the answer or work out the answer without being systematic. So I have to tell them that mathematicians are some of the most intelligent people I know. Part of the skill of working out the answers and making new discoveries is specifically by being systematic. So it's a very important skill, and it's something that's important for them to do. But it is a challenge to get them to do it. They really want to just leap to the right answer without doing all of that.
But you take this in life. Supposing you've lost something, you've lost your phone or your keys or something, whatever it is, then you search for it. You have to do that systematically. So you search everywhere.
Have you been watching me, Toni? Is that what it is?
No, systematic, being able to work systematically and think about that and plan, is important in all sorts of ways. And then you need a deeper understanding of subject content, not just so you can get a question in an exam or test right, including all the connections between different topics and other subjects. And the point about learning is you need to be able to apply and use what you've learned, and you won't be able to apply it and make use of it unless you have a really good understanding.
I mean, it's a very simple example of that. It's percentages or comparing prices. Which item is less? Do I get five for this price, or 1 for that price, or 3 for that price? And percentages as well. If you don't understand what the percentages are, then you might think, oh, well, if I have this little formula, if I apply it, then I'll work it out. But you might have applied it wrong if you don't understand it.
Sure.
Absolutely. And yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's right. I agree. Then there's collaborative team working skills. Now, that means working with other people, and you've got to have empathy. You've got to sort of, you've got to be understanding of the way other people think and realize that they don't necessarily think exactly the same way as you do or behave the same way, but what they're doing is valid, and maybe they can make a different sort of contribution. And that means flexible. It also means that you respect other learners, other people, and you're tolerant of difference or something that irritates you.
It's beautiful to behold if you have a group and you've got one learner who knows everything, and if they're put in a group, they just want to do it for the others. You encourage them to say, okay, instead of doing it for them, ask them questions, help them work it out for themselves, and don't reveal it until everyone's had a really good think about it. And what I find is that there will be surprises that come from the ones who are the lower attainers. They will have insights that others might not have thought about. And by combining the everybody's thoughts, everybody, including the higher attainers, get much deeper understanding. And the respect that is built up through doing that is beautiful.
And then there's communication skills. So of course you need communication when you're working with other people, or maybe you've done something on your own. You have to present a report to other people, and this is both.
And they have to understand it, and it has to be correct.
Yes, indeed, and it has to be appropriate for your audience. So if you, we see that, don't we, with people on the television and radio, giving us quite complicated graphs and so on about COVID and the rates of spread and all these sort of facts and figures, and they're presenting it in a way for a general audience that a general audience would understand. If they were presenting it for another group of scientists, they would present it in a slightly different way. And what they would present would be more detailed and more complicated, probably. So this has got to be one-to-one, and presentation, being able to make a presentation to a group, like public speaking. And actually, this one-to-one, it means listening to the other person. We might have put that in the collaborative team working skills as well. It means being able to respond to the other people or other person, as well as just talking about something.
And writing a book. I mean,
yes.
Just whatever you're writing about, the audience that you're writing for has to understand it. If you're writing it for children, you're writing it for, let's say, adults that are non-specialists, or you're writing it for a specialist audience. What you say and the way you say it, the communication skills, is you really have to think about it, and they have to want to read and be able to understand what you're conveying.
One of my daughters is a social worker, and the reports she writes every day are hugely important on her client, what she's done for her clients, what their needs are, and what she's done for them. And the last thing, but not least here, is creativity and imagination in a variety of forms. Remember, these are as what Caroline called life skills. So I'm involved, Caroline and I are most interested in teaching mathematics, but this applies whatever students, both young people and adults, are learning. These are skills, or just learning something that is part of your leisure activities. These are skills that come into life.
And the better that you get with the skill, let's say take art, say painting, the better you get and the more skills you have, the more flexibility you have as a painter, the more creative you can be. And then you think, well, what if I want to maybe do some sculptures as well? What you learn from being a sculptor, you can then take back and use in your paintings, and you get more and more insights as you go. And then the other, it's a word that's used a lot in mathematics, but it's useful in everything, and that is visualization. Now, I'm a balloon artist among some of my skills, and one of the things I can do is someone can ask me for something to make out of a balloon, and I might have I usually haven't made it before, and I'll scrunch up my face and I'll visualize the thing. I might have to look at a picture, but then what I'm doing while I'm scrunching up my face, and they go, "Are you all right?" I'm like, "Oh yes, I'm fine. I'm just visualizing," and that's my habit is to scrunch up my face, and I'm actually processing how I'm going to make it. Yes. And so I'm visualizing the process of making this thing that I have never made before. So I might make it once and it might come out looking like a thing. and then like a nondescript thing. But because I've got a picture in my head, I've decided what I'm going to do, and I might go, okay, well that didn't work, so let me do it again and make it slightly differently until, if you persevere with it, you end up with something really nice. Sometimes I get it right first time, which is wonderful. And the more experience you have, the better you can do it on the first time. But the thing with the visualization, it also works for, you want to decorate a room, you want to buy a new car, you want to visualize what you want, you want to, engineers designing a town or designing some roads. The visualization comes into everything.
And another thing about creativity, which is sort of something that we're used to doing every day pretty much, is using our phones and taking pictures. And I do not mean selfies. I'm really tired of seeing people selfies. But actually,
excuse me, sorry, Tony. I'm sorry. Excuse me. Oh, sorry. Was I interrupting? Go ahead.
No, what I mean is, you can be very creative with your phone, the sort of pictures you take, and it's easy, isn't it? So photography is, of course, a skill, but actually we can do a lot with our phones. What about this cartoon?
I love that. I'm going to read it, Tony. I've got to read it. Is that all right? Oh, you can do, I'm going to do one voice, you do the other, okay? I taught my dog to whistle.
I don't hear him whistling.
I said I taught him. I didn't say he learnt it. That is really good, Tony.
Well, it happens with parents, and at home you think you've taught your child to do something or other, and certainly it happens with teachers. Teachers can often stand up at the front of the class and explain something, and they think they've covered that. There's this horrible word, I've covered it. It's on my, it's on the curriculum, it's on my list of what I've got to teach. I've done it. Well, if that's what the teacher might be saying, but have the children taken anything in at all, or how much have they taken in? So that's what we're worried about.
And is once enough, Tony? That's another thing. Is once, and it's not, I'm not talking about revision. I'm talking about repeating it in a few different ways until they've really got it.
Now look at this classroom and these girls. Now that could have been me 60 or 70 years ago in the classroom, okay? And what you see, wooden desks, rows, columns with everybody apart with an aisle between the desks for walk up and down. They also had inkwells in them, and I used a pen that you dipped in the inkwell. And what the girls are wearing there are gym slips. That's what they were called. But I see maybe metal desks and chairs, and a bit different, but I often see classrooms with rows of desks like that. And that's a pretty hopeless classroom, a furniture arrangement of a classroom. Now here's, by contrast, here's something much more flexible. Look at those tables. They can be arranged in a circle or a shape where they're sort of, as you see, closer to the camera there. And some of those children are sitting on chairs. Some of them are sitting on sort of big cushions. And on the right, but mostly cut off the picture, there were more children on kneelers at a lower table. So that's that's an unusually flexible style, and much more common are these double desks. But very often those double desks are in rows and columns, aren't they, Caroline? Is that what you see in schools very often?
Yes, I'm seeing the double desks much like the picture from the 50s on the top left there, where instead of one person, it's two people sitting at a double desk, and then there's a gap, and then there's two more people, or you might have a row of four, but either way they're all facing the front, and there isn't group. It's hard to make group work happen.
Well, there's two examples of group work. One with small children doing some science, that's what it looks like, in a primary school, and the one on the right are possibly even, 17, 18-year-olds, they look, but they're in school, round a table, discussing something, working on it together, contributing to the learning. Now, what is very helpful in a classroom is to have, in many ways, we could spend a whole hour talking about group work, but what is particularly helpful is in a big class, as is typical in Africa, the teachers I work with in schools in Africa, typically 60 in a class is normal. Okay, so it's very hard for the teachers to work with the children individually. But if they're in groups of 4, then the teacher has, instead of 60, he or she is interacting with 15 groups and can go from group to group and, listen to, ask some questions, find out where they're up to, make some helpful suggestions, and then move on. So group work has a lot of advantages. It has advantages for the learners because they're learning what we were talking about just now, the team working skills, and they're learning about communication. So different arrangements of furniture make different teaching and learning styles possible. So I want to compare the 19th century teaching method, which you still see today, and the 21st century teaching method. So what does a change to a 21st style of teaching mean? Well, this is the typical 19th century teaching method. The teacher talks and explains something, and then there's some student activity. Now that's following a method or algorithm, drill and practice exercise, and apply one mathematical idea. Now this is about teaching mathematics. It could be any subject really. And this was quite justified 100, 200 years ago, because actually the teacher was the fountain of knowledge. There wasn't access to knowledge in other ways, as there is now. And it doesn't work now. It doesn't work insofar as maybe the children don't listen well enough and the teacher thinks she's like teaching the dog to whistle. She's explained it and it's been covered, but the children haven't learned much. And it just doesn't work because it doesn't help the learners to develop the skills and the ability to learn independently.
And
So
another example would be, let's say, geography. So the teacher might cover a whole aspect, maybe geology, something about rocks, and then the learners would then make some notes, draw a picture perhaps, and then an exercise might be, okay, now look in the book and answer these questions, rather than have discussions and have some independent learning leading to more interest in the subject. Yes. and curiosity.
Well, let's look at what we're proposing now should be the 21st century teaching method. In most lessons, it doesn't always apply. The lesson should start with with student activity. Occasionally, teacher activity is appropriate, necessary, but more often than not, we're suggesting lessons should start with student activity. Now that means mathematical thinking or critical thinking, whatever the subject, using what they know, trying out new ideas, making conjectures and testing out those ideas to see if they're right, see if they work.
Again, that's with mathematics, but with any other subject, it would work in a similar way. You could say, okay, we're going to learn about this aspect of history. So the first assignment could be is go and investigate and find out what you can find out for yourselves in working groups, and find out and ask questions, figure out some background, what else is happening in the world at the same time as this is happening in history, get some real depth going on, and then everyone come together and continue
You might, though, be conjecturing even in a subject like history. You may say,
Mhm.
well, supposing we were having a meal, I think we'd be eating, I know you might make a description of what you think somebody in Tudor times might have, had for dinner. And that would
Yeah, you
depend
could.
whether they were rich or poor, for example. And then you could try and find out if what ifs what you were supposing would be the case, whether it's true or not. That's the testing. So it doesn't just apply to maths.
No, totally. And with history, for example, I mean, there's so much you could do. I mean, I'm just using history as an example because we're specifically using mathematics with the slideshow. But I find history is brilliant because you can think, okay, what else is happening in that history timeline? And what were your ancestors doing? Where were they? What were they doing? What was happening with your ancestry in that same time frame? And as you say, what were they eating? How were they traveling? What were their difficulties? Obviously, they survived because you're here. There are so many possibilities in all subjects.
Well, but you can also ask Granny, because I'm regretting now there are people I knew, and I didn't ask them about their experiences in the First World War or the Second World War. And it's too late now. They've departed.
And if you're not lucky enough to have a granny, then you can go to a care home and talk to people or talk to historians, and that you're not limited to the people in your family if you're not fortunate enough to have a granny.
So this is not just about what you teach in school. It's about curiosity about life and how it's, what it means, what it used to mean in the past, what it means now, what can we do to make it better. So this is not just about school, but let's continue to think about a typical lesson and teaching. So following on from the student activity, the students should be talking to each other, and the teacher's guiding the learning now, not from the front telling the children, but walking around probably, because now the children may be working in pairs or groups. And then the students need to write down, might be recording by, drawing diagrams or whatever. And
or
then,
making videos.
Oh, they might, yes. And then there's class discussion. Now, this is the whole class again. And this is where the teacher will be conducting managing the whole learning situation. Now, it might be from the back of the classroom, because the teacher might be calling out different groups of learners to explain something to everybody. And then the teacher will be giving an explanation, which might be quite similar in some respects to the teach talk that I've indicated for the 19th century teaching method. But now it'll be much more meaningful to the learners, because they've been thinking about this topic. They've been working on it themselves, and the teacher can ask them questions, and they're going to give answers that are based on what they've just been doing, and the teacher's explanation will seem more relevant and seem, it'll just works better. The teacher then sums up and gives, and one of the things the teacher's applying at this stage is the technical words, the actual mathematical words or the technical words in science or whatever the subject is. And this is the way to teach. And it's what we call inquiry-based learning, or sometimes called activity-based learning, or guided reinvention. That's quite interesting, that word. It means...
I like that term, guided reinvention. It implies you are inventing. It implies you're making discoveries. So I love, you're the one that said it. We're all mathematicians, because as we make discoveries, as it's not about memorizing things, it's about making discoveries, because we are actually making the same discoveries that someone back in history made. Okay, so somebody else has discovered it before you, but you are still making that same discovery. How exciting is that?
But it's new to you, you see.
Exactly.
You're finding it out, and you're discovering it because it's new to you. so teachers spoils it, actually, if they tell the children first. I mean, take Pythagoras' theorem, for example. We won't go into the detail of Pythagoras' theorem. It doesn't matter if you don't remember what it is.
It stirs fear in most people's hearts, Toni.
Oh dear, oh dear. Well, typically the teacher will have explained it and told them why it works, and then they will have used it. Okay, and if they've used it right, they'll have got the correct answer and a tick in the test. But they may not have understood. But the way I teach to Pythagoras' theorem, the children do a jigsaw first, and then they think about the jigsaw and why the pieces fit together in the way they do. And it's a jigsaw with triangles and squares. And from that, they get their Pythagoras' theorem. Now, at the end of the lesson that we've just been talking about, the teacher needs to get answers from the members of the class and wants to have everybody, not just one or two people, not just a few, but everybody answering. And also at the beginning of a lesson, sometimes the teacher can use one of these methods just to assess, if she doesn't know, how much the children know about that topic, of the fundamentals that underlie the topic and are needed if they're going to be able to get on with what's new today. So these are three methods of the teacher getting everybody to answer. The one on the top left there is, well, what I call Showboard. So you see the children have written something large, written with large writing on these boards, and they're holding them up, and everybody's got to hold one up when the teacher asks them to to hold up their Showboard with an answer that the teacher can see. So the teacher can take a few minutes to look around the class and see what their answers are. And she can, say, John here has given this answer and Karen has given that answer. And she wants to repeat the answers. Now, just below that, where the children are wearing yellow masks there, that is about a yes/no answer, where it's either a true, false, yes or no. Is it this or is it that? Thumbs up for this, thumbs down for that. And so you see those children, the one right at the very front is doing a thumbs down. And you can see that the teacher can insist that everybody answers and participates. And then on the right, this is a question of the teacher's asked a question, or maybe it's written on the board, and gives four possible answers. Is it answer number one? Well, if so, if you think that, you put up one finger. Is it answer number two? If you think that, you put up two fingers. Is it answer three? If you think it's three, you put up three fingers, and you put up four fingers for answer four. Now, if you look at that, you will see that some children have got one finger up, some children have got two. I can see some fours. I don't actually see any threes, but there are probably
I see something of everything. Yeah.
Yes.
So this is so powerful. I have been doing this. I haven't had the luxury of the little boards yet. I'm actually going to create my own. I'm going to laminate my own and take them in, because it's not so easy to. It's very powerful, but I haven't been able to actually integrate that yet. I'm working on it. But the thumbs up and the thumbs down, you ask the right questions, and showing the numbers. And the thing is that I tell them, can you show me with your fingers so I know what you're thinking? And the thing is, you don't have the one hand going up, miss, I've got an answer. And you've got the same person who's always immediately putting their hand up and suppressing everybody else's thoughts. As soon as one person, this is what I tell them again, once one person answers, everybody else stops thinking. Unless they vehemently disagree with it. But mostly they just stop thinking and go, it's answered, let's move on.
Caroline, they may not have even started thinking, because they will have perhaps not been concentrating, or in their mind, they're not likely to be asked. And if they are asked, they'll start thinking when they're asked, you know. So a lot of children will just leave it to the ones who want to answer. And
the ones who always answer. And
yeah.
the thing that I have seen is exactly what you've just said, that everyone will be putting a few of them will be putting up 1, 2 fingers, and then you'll say, I need an answer from everybody, and somebody's head will come up and go, what was the question? So
Yeah.
yes, exactly what you just said. They weren't listening, but then because they're being expected to actually give an answer, everybody is, they then listen to the question, and then you discover they actually give some really good answers and some good thought into it. So it's so powerful to make sure everybody is engaged.
Actually, the children like it. They like the thumbs up, thumbs down, or fingers. They really like it. And I think you can use all these 3 methods and vary them. And it does get everybody involved. And then I suggest very often to the teachers that they ask the question twice, all right? And they ask it once, they get everybody answering. And then they ask, supposing it's a thumbs up, thumbs down, they ask one of the learners who gave their thumbs up to explain why they gave that answer, all right? And then they ask somebody who had their thumbs down, why did you give that answer? And everybody's supposed to listen and think, which was the right answer? Did I give the right answer? They listen to the reasons. And then the teacher says, now I want you to answer again. Thumbs up if it's this, thumbs down if it's that. If it's true, you thumbs up. If it's false, you thumbs down. And the children can change their mind now about the answer, and the teacher can see how many people now know the right answer, and what the state of understanding is, and what needs to be done to help everybody to understand. And with the
And that's without the teacher explaining anything. It's
exactly.
simply hearing 2 different explanations from their own peers, enabling people to process and come up with a more, perhaps some deeper thought, because they might even know the answer. They might all know the answer, but if they don't think it through, or they haven't made connections, it might just come out wrong, or they might have heard the question wrong, or whatever. It's again, powerful.
Of course, if there is with the multiple choice with 4 possible answers, the teacher will ask 4 children, and actually the teacher may ask more than 4 children. She may ask several children who gave the same answer for their reasons.
Especially the ones that have given the wrong answer, because if they got the answer wrong, they could have many different thoughts that have led them there. And then and also the ones that got the answer right, some of them will just go, because I know, but somebody else might go, well, yes, because of this and that and the other. So yeah, multiple people speaking on that is very helpful.
Teacher will also learn, because the teacher will, hearing these answers, hearing the reasons for the answers, will understand better why the children are having difficulty. They will appreciate more, the teacher will appreciate more what the misconceptions are. And then the teacher will need to think about how they're going to help them.
Yeah, and they'll learn misconceptions of individuals, but they'll also hear again and again and again the more general misconceptions, which means that they can address that to everyone, but they can also identify specific misconceptions with individuals.
Okay, now this is a document that's been published in South Africa about 2 years ago, just before COVID, actually. I think it was 2019. But it applies in different countries, and there are different examples of similar documents. For example, in Rwanda, their national curriculum calls very, very clearly for teaching for these competences and skills we were talking about earlier. And And this applies in this country. What we see here applies in this country too. I like this diagram. It comes out of this document, which is called Teaching Mathematics for Understanding, and I stress understanding, making sense of the ideas. Now, this can apply to other subjects. This diagram can apply to other subjects as well. So if you see the four big boxes at the top, there's conceptual understanding, there's reasoning, that's why one thing follows if you assume another thing is true, and then why the next thing follows, the reasons that the next thing follows, and something else follows, reasoning, proof in mathematics. The strategic competence, can you follow through and use and apply what you know in a way that achieves something with it. It may be a calculation or it may be an application. And then there's procedural fluency. This is whether it's sort of something that you might have to make a lot of effort to do, and maybe get wrong a few times before you get it right, or fluency as it comes naturally and it just flows. And fluency is a word that we often use in respect of speaking in a foreign language, but it's something that applies to learning and carrying out different applications. Sorry, Caroline.
And it's being able to access your knowledge. So again, no matter what subject it's in, it might be the times tables, it might be how fractions work together, or it might be applying the knowledge that you have in history or geography. Like, oh, okay, wait, I know this thing about this, or fact about rocks or chemicals. Now I know something about this chemical, and this other chemical is a similar chemical, so I can make assumptions about the second chemical, knowing either it's similar to a chemical or different to a chemical, and that would be fluency as well. You building on your existing knowledge, but you're able to dip into it rather than going, well, this is everything that you're learning is effectively something new and something you have to memorize.
Now you see the arrows at the top, that they show how each one of these is connected to and leads to the other. So, but everything's connected to everything else. Now, in the bottom, you see the large letters, learning-centered classroom. And on the previous diagram with the 19th century teaching, we had a teacher-centered classroom. You might call this a learner-centered classroom, as opposed to a teacher-centered classroom. And around the edge, it might be a little difficult for you to read, and we don't want to spend a lot of time talking about each individual box there and white boxes and what's in them. But some of them are to do with what the children or learners are doing, like active learning rather than just listening, making sense of the topic, problem solving, justifying answers. That means giving explanations, applying the subject in context, different context perhaps. Now, those are things that the children are going to be engaged in, the learners. But then you come on round, you've got things like addressing learners' errors. Well, it might be the children that realize that they've made a mistake and pay attention to that and do something about it themselves.
Or that wonderful spot the mistake activity that you do, where you put all the mistakes together and hand those back to the learners, and they've got to identify the other mistakes that have been made within the class. I mean, what a great way of working out errors and working it out independently of the teacher, or with the teacher's guidance. But yeah.
And the next one here is assessment. Now, it can be self-assessment for a reason. You want to know whether this was right and you can move on, or whether it wasn't right. You can work often work out for yourself whether it was right or not, or whether you want to do better, could do better, or it can be assessment by the teacher. And the assessment can be for the purpose of making a report, or it can be just what we call formative assessment, so that it's like the diagnosis when you've got some symptoms and you want a cure, and so you ask for a diagnosis. Well, the doctor has to assess what you told him and see what he or she thinks is what's wrong and what to do about it. So let's move on. And this is a slide about what AIMSSEC, my organization, has to offer for teaching and learning in school and at home. So there's a website which we call Aiming High. It's a teacher network. It's for teachers, and it provides a lot of resources that they can give to their learners, a lot of activities that the children can use in the sort of lesson that we've been talking about. And then there's what we call daily starters, and that's on the AIMSSEC Facebook page, and there's the link for it. And they are linked to whole learning packs on the Aiming High website. And then there is
all these links, by the way, are in the description.
And then there's our Happy Maths Hour today, which is put onto YouTube. And then there's workshops, which Caroline and I do once a month, with ideas for lessons and home learning as well. And we provide what we call an inclusion and home learning guide, which you find on AIMSSEC, on the Aiming High network. But you will find recordings of today's chat, Happy Maths Hour, and lots of other videos. And now here's 3 examples of 3 different activities. One's called handshakes. Now here, this one is a very simple question. Supposing there's a group of 20 people and everybody shakes hands with everybody else and says hello. How many handshakes will there be altogether? Now, there's a lot of mathematics that arises from that. And we're not going to go into it today, but it's a simple question. You can give it to younger children, and you can start with a group of, say, 4 or 5, or even 2 or 3, and ask how many handshakes. And these are one-to-one greetings. So because of COVID, we called it all bows, so you can bow, and that's, social distancing. Now here's what I mentioned, Pythagoras. There's the jigsaw. That's the way we approach Pythagoras. Just a few pieces there, the blue triangles and the pink, green, and orange squares. And based on that simple puzzle, the children can discover Pythagoras' theorem for themselves. Now, the last one is about probability, learning what chance you really have to win a prize if you buy a ticket in a national lottery. And we start off with just a few numbers, 6 in this case, and this is what I call a little lottery. And the mathematics behind working out what your chance of winning is. Now, in the national lottery, there are usually 49 numbers, and your chance of winning is so small, you might as well not bother with it. Anyway, I think our time is up, Caroline. So I think we're going to come back to this another day.
It is indeed 6 o'clock. Okay, there will be all these Happy Maths Hour broadcasts are on the Happy Maths Hour folder in the section. There's a special section for Happy Maths Hour broadcasts on the YouTube channel, the Maths Toys YouTube channel. So go ahead and look for the other ones, because this will be a series. So please do go and look. The links are all in the description, and check out there will be maybe 2 or 3 broadcasts, so that we can do some real solid thinking and encouraging for education in the 21st century.
And we're going to talk in another session about learning at home. And we're going to talk about families where you've got children of different ages, and learning activities that can involve everyone. Particularly, well, there's lots of different. We're going another day. We'll come back to talking about learning at home, and a bit about when you've got not working with necessarily, when you've got small children, what about their learning, preschool and young children. So there's lots to think about, and we've just it's a big subject, isn't it, Caroline? Anyway, it's time to say goodbye.
Thank you very much. We'll see you next time from Toni Beardon and myself, Caroline Ainslie. Enjoy our videos. And if you're on YouTube, like and subscribe and ding the notification bell. Thank you.
Thank you and goodbye, everybody, and enjoy your evening. Bye-bye.